Hi everyone, welcome to the patch 13.17 notes rundown. This is an absolutely massive patch, so let's get right into it. They're changing Aatrox's passive to be all magic damage. At least that's what I'm assuming this means, because his passive was already doing bonus magic damage, and they changed the damage type of his W to magic damage. Their goal was to reduce the viability of lethality builds, but this is also a nerf to Black Cleaver build. So the only build which this isn't a nerf to is a Triforce build, I guess. So he loses like a lot of build flexibility, or he just gets nerfed. So this champion will drop out of the tier list. He was already barely on it, so like don't play Aatrox basically. Akshan. Yeah, he's just getting a nerf across the board, I guess. Like the health growth and the armor growth. Like this sort of they tried to make him like more sustainy, but like this isn't really his playstyle on solo queue. So yeah, this is like a nothing buff nerf. They're saying the AD growth nerf hurts its crit, but by the time you have like 2 free crit items, the base AD doesn't play a huge role. You're only losing 9 damage at level 18, so I don't know what they're thinking. This doesn't do anything basically. Blitz, they're nerfing Blitz jungle, so his E doesn't do bonus damage to non-champions, but this is a buff to support, I guess. And he was already like pretty good as a support, so yeah, just play Blitz support. He's good, he's on the tier list. Elise, they're increasing the on-hit damage from the spiders, or on all the basic attacks, I should say. Elise's own damage. So yeah, this just buffs her clear, and she was already pretty okay. So in solo queue at least. The stun duration is going up slightly when you max it, which is also nice, but not that huge. Yeah, this might be a buff to say a Nashor's type build, but we'll see if she'll end up going Nashor's. But it's a buff regardless of what she builds, so she might make the tier list because there's not that many good AP champions. Gnar is getting an extra 20 damage on his Mega Q and on his Mega W, which is 40 damage. It is like a relatively big buff, but because this champ is terrible for solo queue, and he has like bad matchups as well, this really won't make him like more. This won't really improve him as champion all that much in solo queue at least. But people might start playing it because pros will start picking it. Yeah, he does a lot of damage, but just because of how his passive works, you need to coordinate with your team, and like that's not it's already hard enough to coordinate as a top laner with your team in solo queue, and having like that extra mini game just doesn't help him. So yeah, don't play Gnar. Hecarim. So they're decreasing his mana cost, but the Omni Vamp doesn't scale with bonus AD anymore on his W. So I'd say this is a nerf. And this champion already wasn't that great, so I think there's always better champions to play than Hecarim. Which brings us to Kayn. Kayn is losing 20% bonus AD on his W, regardless of if he goes Shadow or Darken. The quality of life changes doesn't do anything. So yeah, 20%, it's sizable. I mean, also losing a 5 flat. So I mean, this mostly hurts his assassin, which was their point, but it's very small. So if you play Kayn, you should still play him, but he's just slightly nerfed. That's it. They're also nerfing Kha'Zix. So Kha'Zix is very strong right now. They're nerfing the bonus AD ratio, but only by 5%, which is very small. This is also a smaller nerf to his like bruiser type build, but because all his items have also been buffed, both for lethality and bruiser, this change doesn't really do anything. Kha'Zix is still Kha'Zix. Kindred. Despite our best efforts, Kindred blah 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 blah. So their nerfs didn't work, which is because they reverted the nerfs that actually hurt him and they gave him placebo nerfs instead. So what they're doing right now is they're nerfing the slow on the E, and they're reducing the missing health damage. I mean, Kindred will still be Kindred, but his problem is that basically whichever team is better will benefit from his ultimate, which is why he isn't that great as solo queue, even though the champ is super busted. The fact that it's such a team, that his ultimate is such a team game, makes it like very hard to win against the Kindred who has the better team, but it also makes it harder to win as Kindred if the enemy team is better than yours. So this is a good champion, but this is more of a pro play champion in my opinion. But he's good. If you play Kindred, keep playing Kindred, but there's usually better champions to pick up in the jungle. Lux. They say they want to buff Locksmith, so the magic damage on the passive is going up by 10. The E gets nerfed by 5 flat damage, and the Q cooldown is going down at max ranks. The base mana regen on her is also going slightly down, but all in all this is a buff, and this is a slightly bigger buff to mid than support. She might make the tier list for mid, she'll still make the tier list for support, I guess. Lux is just a very good champion in my opinion. Naafiri. So they're just nerfing her all around. 15 HP isn't that huge, but for her playstyle, actually, for the type of champion she is, the base health nerf is pretty big, is like important. Yeah, the damage is just going down all across the board. I mean, this champion is a bit of a noob champion. Also, what they're doing is you can now attack the pack mates, so they're easier to kill, I guess, similar to Yorick Ghouls. And this is just a noob champion in my opinion. Like, there's better assassins to play if you're good, and if that isn't the case, this champion is just overtuned. So, I mean, pick a different champion. Orianna. So, I mean, the text sort of suggests that Riot doesn't know what they're talking about. They're saying her laning is weak, but she can be like insanely oppressive in lane just because of the on-hit damage on her auto attacks. So she is sort of reliant on having a good diver to combo the ult with. But if you have that, she's pretty good in solo queue. But she's very difficult to play really well. It just takes a lot of effort because she's so focused on sustain damage. But late game she's an absolute nuke, like the ultimate is. So yeah, she might make the tier list. She's a very good champion. Quinn is getting nerfed quite considerably. His Q is losing 20 damage at max rank. Her E as well. Like, the health growth is going up, but if you get caught on Quinn, like especially early, then it doesn't. The health growth doesn't matter, and you losing damage late game is very impactful, I guess. So like, she should be a very good solo queue champion, but she has issues, especially playing weak side early. So she might make the tier, she might not make the tier list. She's also not very blind pickable. But yeah, big nerf for Quinn. Samira is getting 30 HP, which, I mean, it's a nice buff because of like her all-in nature, but she's incredibly reliant on having a good engage support. So if you have a good mental, you can climb with her in solo queue, but I think there are like more flexible picks to play if you're playing solo. Tryndamere. So Tryndamere is getting an attack range buff, which in certain matchups in top is pretty big if you have the skill to actually utilize the range. His AD is going down, so 4 AD nerf doesn't sound like much, but because of the bonus AD he gets when he's low HP and the and like the crit chance going up when you have Fury, it adds up because his stuff gets multiplied, right? And this also makes it harder to like get like lucky crits and kills that way early. So in certain matchups in top he's still fine, but especially for mid and in like the all-in matchups, or in matchup where you just have to like sit, skill, and like try to all-in at some point, this is definitely a nerf. So he might drop out from, in our tier list he was a pretty good mid pick, and he'll probably won't make it because of these changes. Later into the game the range doesn't matter too much because you're either on top of someone and you have the movement speed and the cooldown reduction on the dash, or you're not on top of someone and you're kind of screwed. TF is getting 10% AP buff on the Q. This doesn't really matter. This like TF doesn't get a whole lot of AP, and super late it just, this buff doesn't do anything. He just doesn't do enough damage to like be that great of a pick. Vex. So Vex is getting 10 damage flat on her Q, and the W cooldown is going down by 4 at rank 1. But the thing with Vex is Vex maxes W second. So this is a buff early, but once you get to a point where you have to put points into W, she becomes the same champion. And I'm not sure if Vex players will end up maxing E second, because E only gives 20 damage flat per rank up, and W gives 40 damage per rank up, plus the larger shield. So I think you will still max W, which means this is a pretty big nerf for early game, and I think like she's a decent counter pick, especially in solo queue, just because of the resets and like how she deals with engaged champions. She's just a good counter pick. She might make the tier list now. Vi. So they're trying to make Vi more of a like sustained damage type, but the problem with that is if you're like getting smacks on anyone, you'd much rather be Darius or Jax or something like more broken in that regard. Like the W passive cooldown reduction going up by a second, this is a buff to her clear. Shield strength is also a very small buff to her clear, but her ultimate is losing 100 damage flat, and it's losing bonus AD. So she has to like sort of go the bruiser builds now, I think, especially with the shield going up. So yeah, you have to do that now on Vi, but I think there are like better champions to play, especially in jungle, that clear faster and have more reliable ganks. She's very reliant on her teammates because of her crappy dash. Most junglers have like better dashes, so don't play Vi. She's bad. Xerath, this champion is terribly broken as support, and even though these are good nerfs, like they're trying to gate his mana a bit more, he'll still be a decent support pick and will probably make the tier list. So Jin Zhao, they're making his passive skill with his max health, the heal on every third hit. And if you build any sort of HP item, it's a buff. But like this champion is an early game pick, and everything that happens after doesn't matter, especially with nerfs, with buffs this small. So yeah, there are just better champions than Jin Zhao because he skills like garbage. Also, his playstyle, especially in solo queue, is very reliant on him being able to nuke someone in the time frame it takes to like go in, cast your ult, and then kill someone before the enemy can respond again. So not a great champion. Zoe's getting a big buff. Her health regen is going up, but her magic reduction is 30% at all ranks. So you put 1 point into E and 30%, which isn't that huge early, but later into the game it's pretty significant. And it's also a relatively big buff to Zoe support. I think Zoe is a very good champion if you put the time into learning her, both mid and support. So yeah, she might make the tier list now. Items. So the Bloodthirster HP threshold for the bonus AD is going to 70% instead of 50. A lot of like the ADC type of champions will be hurt by this. This item just isn't very good. Previous iterations of the item were much better in my opinion. Some champions that like go in and try to stay high health, for them it's still decent. So yeah, there are usually better items to build. So yeah, I don't know, it's pretty big nerf. Duskblade. So they're probably gutting Duskblade, is from what I can tell. So you, instead of being immune to everything when it procs, you will just be destroying the incoming projectiles, but everything after that you can still get hit by. And they already like nerfed this item, and there's better items to build. This is just a huge nerf to champs that really want this item, and there's usually better items to build now. But since they buffed all the lethality items and Black Cleaver and Sterak's and stuff, the champions that like to build this have other options. Even Shroud. This was a terribly broken item. It was just too gold efficient because of the passive, and they're nerfing it by 3%. You will still be building this item in some cases, but it's not a go-to item anymore in every scenario. Sometimes you will just need to lock it, and especially on like bruiser type champions, or like champions that were in support that were still speccing into this, they will probably move on to their own items. Gore Drinker. This is a pretty bad item, but it's absolutely necessary on some champions. They're buffing it by 100. So this is just a buff to champions that were already building this. For instance, Jarvan, or like Bruiser Kha'Zix, or Bruiser Rengar. But you won't be building this item when you weren't building it before. The 100 HP buff is not that huge. But this is a big buff to champions that were building it anyway, like Jarvan. Shield Bow. So the shield is going up by 75 at level 11, but as you level up, the value goes back to its old value. So there are some cases in which in which rushing Shield Bow is better now, but overall this buff doesn't make the item any better. This item used to be really good, but now it's pretty meh. Shojin. This item is incredibly strong, and I don't know why more people don't build it. So they're giving it a lot of health and nerfing the AD, and for the cooldown reduction, the cooldown reduction now scales more flat, but less with bonus AD. So this is a huge buff to like bruisers that like CDR, I guess. So for Jarvan example, this is a huge buff because you can either still go AD after this, or you can build tank. yeah, like this item is incredibly strong. Build it, I guess. Shiv AP nerf. Okay, yeah, buy LeBlanc. Stridebreaker HP going up. Problem with Stridebreaker is that not many champions can build it. So this is buffed to champions that will typically build it, but other than that it doesn't do a lot. Nocturne is a champion that comes to mind. I mean, you're getting 75 extra damage on Nocturne, great. Futures market. They're gutting this rune because the other rune options are Minion Dematerializer and Biscuits. And for junglers especially, you always go futures market if you're taking inspiration as your primary rune. So this is mostly a jungle nerf, I'd say. Junglers that use first strike, for example. Yeah, it's a pretty big nerf because it becomes a buff after 18 minutes, but the primary usage of this is for getting early spikes. So for some mid lanes it's last chapter. For junglers it's often Serrated Dirk, or for AP junglers it's getting like the pretty expensive AP components. So yeah, this is a jungle nerf for certain champions. Catch up experience. Okay, what they're saying is they're changing how it works and it ends up as a nerf. So it's harder to get back in levels. The level system is sort of messed up. You can have 60 CS more than your opponent and he can like still be the same level. It's pretty nuts. But I don't think this nerf is sizable enough to actually like change the game to how it should be. And dragons now have patience bar, so this is useful because a lot for teammates. If you're a jungle main, a lot of laners won't exactly know how the patience works, so they end up resetting it, and the indication might now help to make them not leash the dragon. So let's recap. Gain, significant nerf. Kha'Zix doesn't do anything. Kindred, small nerf. Don't play enough Fury, pretty big nerfs. Xerath is still Xerath, small nerf. Elise, nice buff. Don't play Gnar, solo queue. Lux, nice buff. Ori, nice buff. Samira doesn't do a whole lot, but better than nothing. Not that great to like spam and solo queue by yourself. Twisted Fate doesn't do anything. Vex gets buffed. Zoe gets buffed. Don't play Aatrox, this is a nerf, it's not an adjustment. Akshan unchanged, I guess. Blitz still good as support, maybe even better. Hecarim gets nerfed. Quinn gets nerfed. Tryndamere gets nerfed in a lot of instances. Only in like matchups where you can actually utilize the range. It can be a buff in higher elos, but he's still not very blind pickable there. Fi is garbage. Jin Zhao nerf or change doesn't do anything. And for items, Bloodthirster change doesn't do anything. Duskblade is nerfed. Even Shroud is nerfed. Goredrinker is buffed, but you only build it if you were building Goredrinker anyway. Shield Bow buff is negligible, you might rush it in some instances. Spear of Shojin gets buffed for champions that don't stack AD, so this item is broken. Static Shift, yeah, it's for LeBlanc, nerf, whatever. Stridebreaker, you're not gonna build it because of the buff, but it is a buff. And some jungle changes. Futures market nerf is pretty big for junglers.